Good morning. It's morning oasis time. Just coming in, getting myself situated. Just a little bit. I'm still in the 10 o'clock time frame. Moving things around so I've got plenty of room. Let's see. Move that. Make sure this is in airplane mode. There we go. All right. Good morning. Hi, Claire. Well, you're up. Good morning. Okay, let's see. Morning announcements. I'm going to look back because I did not take the time to actually write out my announcements this morning. We are going to go. Today is Memorial Day. Today's the day that we remember all of those who served and fought for us and all of that, and in the various wars. And most of my family, honestly, I would say probably about 60% of my family on both sides served at some point in their lives. So I definitely want to make a point of just kind of opening that up and creating that space of remembrance and gratitude. And even if we don't really believe in the wars themselves, which I certainly believe there's a better way than warring, we have to honor and respect those that devote their lives to service. And people who sign up in the army and sign up in the military and its various branches have pretty much done that. They've devoted their lives to serving the country. And so, we have to recognize that many of them do so because they don't even have a choice. They don't really have a lot of options. They're doing it because, one, either they're ancestral, their families are longtime service people like ours, or because it's in their heart, it's in their passion, or because they are coming from a family where there's no other way they could possibly get the educational funding and the resources that the military provides its fighters. So there's a lot of different reasons why people join the military, and the lower on the list is because they want to go out and kill people. And that's actually not what most of the people in the military do. My grandfather was an engineer, so an electrical engineer. So he, in Korea and in Japan and Vietnam, he was building electrical systems and rebuilding villages, and that's a huge part of what the Army does. Is they go in and they build things for people in areas that are suffering and struggling, and usually struggling under some sort of dictatorship. This is not a promotion for the military, but just a recognition of the true work that they do and what they face while they're out there doing it. It's it's a hard job, and most of them are just young men, like barely out of high school, and don't have the world experience yet, and so I just want to take a moment to remember them and just be really grateful for what they have done, what they believe in, what their commitment to all the rest of us is. I really respect that. I have to, I see the truth of it. And our leaders, I wish our leaders loved and respected them a lot more. And I wish that they used them as a resource much more judiciously. But anyway, so let's see, other announcements. Well, we have dinner with Jessie this Friday. It is all booked up for this event, but you can always sign up for lunch at Jessie's place. It's a bit more for the tickets, but that's because I'm providing all the food and the drinks, and I'm going to make a yummy spread for that. I'll figure out what I'm making once I know who's coming and what they've got going on as far as dietary needs. Alex says currently writing an essay on World War II. So many lives lost. People don't even remember what actually happened. Oh, exactly. World War II is an excellent example, Alex. I grew up watching World War II documentaries and hearing stories. My grandfather, he signed up when he was 16. He lied so that he could go because he felt so passionate about saving the world from this dictator. And we lost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, like in one surge alone. So many people died. And let's not just remember the people who died, but the people who were injured. So many lost limbs, lost abilities, lost their marbles, right? I mean, it's the casualties are far beyond just the deaths. So it is definitely important that we remember that. I actually watched 2 different war movies over this weekend. One was called Sandcastle, and that was set during the Gulf War. And man, it's hard. It's hard to watch. It's hard to witness. And yes, we did go in and destroy a lot of things. And yes, we did go in and try to rebuild a lot of things. And yeah, it was a conflicted area from far, far back. So it's that was a hard one to witness. And I watched another one actually that was set in Scotland, and that was about World War One. And that was another one where people were shamed and guilted into serving because there was a lot of people who felt like it wasn't their problem, and it was it was somebody trying to take over the world. I mean, gosh, and we certainly, we live here in an imperialist nation. We definitely have our share of problems, and we definitely struggle with the balance of what it is to support versus what it is to control. And no, not always is it good things that come when America comes in fighting, but we, I truly do believe that that we as a country have to remember that because we're privileged, because we have so much, because we have so many resources and such a wealth in our land, and really truly a safety that doesn't exist in Europe and doesn't exist in Africa or in Central Asia or Southeast Asia, right? We're kind of lucky in that respect. Australia is another place that's kind of lucky in that respect. So I just want to be really grateful and recognize we are never really clear on what the whole story is. Our media controls us so completely. So, if you see a soldier out today, thank them. Just thank them. If you had a family member, not to get political, but just to be grateful. Just to be grateful because, we could be in a completely different position. Okay, enough said about that. So let's see. We've got Shauna's doing Tea with the Angels at her place. I think that's this weekend, and you can find that on the Healing Pathwalkers group. I'm sure she still has a few spots left. She's only doing like 4 spots, I think, for that. Good morning. We've got the New Moon Clearing with Shauna and I special, 2 for 1. So you can do a session with the both of us for the price of one of us. And the Chakra Workshop is out there. Let's see. I think that's all the announcements for today. So I am wide open for card pulls today. And I promise I won't make us only use the round cards, though I love them. Oh my gosh, I love them so much. And so anybody who'd like a card pull, good morning, Brian. Good morning, Karen. Let me know, and I would be happy to pull for you guys. Or we can move right into the discussion period of the show. I am going to later be going out and swimming at Rooster Rock State Park, and it's kind of gray and looks awful today. Oh, Brian, I'd love to pull for you. I don't think I've ever pulled a card for you. But they say that it's supposed to be in the 80s by 3 o'clock, so we shall see. Ooh, all right. So, money card, please. Okay, so we'll do Brian and Alex. We've got one more spot available, and I'll go ahead and pull for Brian. Ooh. Just had a shifting there as I tune into him for pulling. Perfect. I'll pull for both of you guys. Do you want me to pull for both of you, Karen, or just one or the other of you? And that's all 3 slots for today. Brian, what deck wants to talk with you? Ah, the Messenger Oracle deck. Ooh. So the Messenger Oracles, they're by Raven Felon. Love her work. Absolutely love her work. I've been seeing a lot of owl stuff this morning. Good morning, Kristen. Okay, perfect. I'll pull for both of you guys. And that fills up our card pull slots for today. Let me go ahead and see what comes up. Oh my gosh, I'm like literally throwing everything on the floor. Do I have another pen? Yay, I do. God bless drawers. Drawers full of things. I watched an interesting talk this morning by Neil Tennyson deGrasse, I think his last name is. He's a physicist, and he's one of the superstar scientist guys who's done wonders for bringing education and awareness to the world, really. He's a really powerful, beautiful man. But what he was talking about is what happens when you die. And it's so interesting to me because he is a staunch believer that when you die, you pass into a non-consciousness, that your life force is nothing more than what's created by the processing of the materials, the food and the energy that you are taking into your body. And it's funny. He used to be one of my heroes before I started doing consciousness work, and since I've started doing more of this work, I'm kind of like, dude, you're missing the point. But I did listen to his talk about what happens when you die today, and that was kind of interesting. And he does have a certain awe and wonder about it. All right, so Brian, let me just feel this for a second. All right, yeah. So you got Follow the Moon. Now, when this card comes up, I'm just going to look it up really quickly. It's card number, of course, number 13. How could it be any other number? When this card comes up, it's beckoning you to not only follow the cycles of the moon and that rhythm and the cycles of where you're at as the moon transitions through her cycles, but it also follows you to and beckons you to take note of how you're reflecting with the moon as well. I'll read the little bit that she wrote in here. I just love her work. 3/4 of Gaia's surface is covered in water, and the moon's pull can lift the Earth's oceans at the equator and carry them along her wake. 2/3 of the human body is also water, therefore you also are subjected to her power. As she waxes and wanes, so do you. Take note, follow the moon cycles, and take note of how you think and feel as her light increases and decreases. Take time to explore and understand her influence upon both your body and your emotions. The other piece that's coming to me as I think about that, Lynn, I'm sorry all the card pull slots are taken today, but I'd be happy to pull for you tomorrow if you would like. Brian, what's popping for me is that you recently tried to do a water meditation and a water video. And I think that they're asking you to understand how your waters are actually being infected more, and really get into that a little bit more before you do that work, and to really understand how the flow of the water within you is influencing you. We often don't think about it. I actually just had, I spent the last week and a half with so flooded with water. It was crazy. My whole body was swollen up. Like my jeans weren't fitting, my shoes weren't fitting, my legs were hurting. I could hardly walk, actually. It was really, really uncomfortable. I had so much water in my system. And we were right coming out of the new moon. It was the time of that new moon period as well. So I had to really get into touch with the waters in my body, and that was the only thing that really gave me the relief. And then I just peed for 2 days. It was crazy. So I think it's asking you to really start to tune into the waters in your body, and I bet you will find some beauty and some mystery in there that you have yet to discover, is what I'm hearing. And let me just feel it for one more moment and see if there's something else. Yeah, and I'm also hearing reflection. See how the reflection of that is impacting those around you as well. That's another piece that I'm hearing. The moon she has no true light of her own. She is reflecting the sunlight that's past us and bringing it back to us. So look at what your reflections are bringing back into you, into your awareness, into your state, which is something I'm kind of working on right now. Maybe that's just for me. All right, Alex, a money card. Let's see. Oh, the Shadowscapes Tarot want to talk to you. Yeah, I think sitting with it for a little while would be good for you, Brian. Oh, Lynn, let me write that down for tomorrow before I forget. All right, Alex. Ooh. One of the things that I don't mention too much, but when I'm transitioning between you guys as I'm pulling cards specifically for you, it is such a funny feeling and sensation in my vessel. You guys each have such different energy and vibrational frequencies, and it's just such a pleasure to tune into you guys. I wanna thank you very much for showing up. It definitely impacts me and beautifully. All right, Alex, let's see what we've got for you. Money. Well, what you got is the Eight of Wands, which definitely isn't a money card per se, but this is about travel and journey. This is about a favorable journey and a favorable trip that will bring you a spiritual understanding and awareness. So it looks like you're going to be traveling, and I know it's a couple months out, but you're coming up here. Maybe you're doing some other traveling before you get up here. But this is definitely something that has to happen right now for you, is this spiritual journeying. She's guided, right? She's guided by the wind, and she checks before she goes. She's blowing the dandelion on the wind to see where the winds are going to take her as she moves forward. So I think that this is a big piece for you, and I think that's something that's really going to open avenues up for you as well. She trusts in her knowledge, right? She's got the foxes relaxing around her. They're all just sitting around her and relaxed. She's grounded. She's got the earth here. She's got tradition behind her, holding and supporting her as well. And she holds the traditions that she's grown, that she believes in, with her, moves with her. She's passionate and creative. So I think it's time to bring all of those things to the fore and move forward in that way with this guidance and allowance. So perhaps they're asking you to also take some trust, just trusting in what's growing and what's coming for you. And spiritual journeying is what's on your plate. I can't wait for you to come. I'm so excited. Let me feel that just a little bit more. Yeah, that's all that's coming through for that. For sure. Oh, I would agree. That totally describes you in my mind. Okay, so Karen and Roger. Let's see. The Energy deck wants to talk with you. Energy Oracle cards. These are by Sandra Ann Taylor. I love this deck as well. Quite a powerful deck. One of the things that I love about Oracle decks is they make Oracleship accessible to anybody. You don't have to know the system of tarot to understand it. You don't have to know. You don't have to know the stories behind the cards. The cards speak for themselves, right? I mean, Metatron, right? That's not your card, but it was the one that was on the bottom. And you don't have to work. I don't think you have to work, Alex, in the spiritual sense. I think that your work is different. I get a yes to that. So, you don't need to be doing spiritual work. There's a lot of people that are quite spiritual that have no need to be doing it as their profession. I think by bringing yourself and your awareness and your frequency and vibration into the corporate world, it's a powerful experience for anyone who encounters you. And how would they possibly encounter you if you weren't there? I'm not in the corporate world. So they're not going to ever encounter me. So you're like an ambassador between these two realms that seem like or think that they're very separate realms. It's kind of like my husband, he works at Intel, and he ended up talking with one of his coworkers, and it turns out there's a group of engineers that are starting their own employee resource group around metaphysical concepts. And he would have never, he never would have known that if he hadn't already been slightly awakened and aware. My husband is very intuitive and gifted in a lot of ways. He holds powerful manifestation energy. His vibrational frequency is pretty high. So he's there, and in a sense, he's like this ambassador that also creates space for others. And it's beautiful. Like he's he's the head of the Oregon chapter for their resource group for employees and their families who suffer from any sort of chronic or debilitating illness or disease or disability. It's the Intel Abilities Group, I think is what they call it. And he brings in guest lecturers of all sorts for these groups to help people learn different ways to heal themselves, different ways to become empowered in their growth and their development and their healing. And that's how these other engineers were like, hey, you want to be in this group with us? So we have all sorts of other ways that we can do this work other than going out and becoming spiritual teachers and spiritual practitioners and lecturers. I mean, that's just one route, There's many other places that need us. We need to be represented in hospitals and in pharmaceutical companies and science companies, right? In technology companies. We need to be everywhere, spiritually aware and awakened people. It doesn't mean that we have to be working as spiritual practitioners. The market is flooded with spiritual practitioners, honestly. So, unless you really have something very unique and special to bring to the fore, and that's their focus, and that's your life passion, and that's everything that drives you in that way, it may not be where you're supposed to be. And clearly for you, and it's no diminishment of your power, your ability, your awakened space, your state, none of that. Okay. So Karen and Roger. Okay, here's the card that came for you guys. Caring Connections. So I'm going to read for you what the book says, because I love to do that with you guys. So this card shows a couple in a tender embrace, with the woman holding the blossoms of new love. Like the community card, this reveals a caring connection, but usually between two people. This card upright signals the beginning or deepening of a kindred spirit friendship, or even the appearance of new love. It can also signify a formal business partnership. When this card appears, be on the lookout for new connections presenting themselves. The relationship you already share may become more intimate, more purposeful, or more present at this time. Notice the opportunities to forge new and deeper bonds with one another. There may be a tender karmic connection at hand. So this is, for me, I know a little bit about your guys' relationship, just a little bit. And what it's telling me is it's time for a new relationship to be blossoming, which I also know is happening for you. So it's really beckoning for you guys to look for the opportunities to react, behave, interact, open to each other differently than what you're used to doing. If you feel yourself on autopilot, pause and remember what it is that you're doing together. And then see what comes from the heart as far as how you want to interact with each other, how you want to bring this forward to each other. And just keep on that path, because this is a part, you're also releasing old karmic patterns from your own histories, from your other experiences, not just with each other, but with others. So allow this to occur. And when you find yourself struggling to get into this space, when you find yourself with something that makes you feel like you're pulling apart, recognize that's something that's the self-work that needs to be done, and then you can come back in together to do the work together. And this actually, a hummingbird just flew right past my window and down and out. So definitely it's time for allowing of beauty and love and appreciation. Find gratitude in the pieces that you can, and find allowance in the spaces that you're not so grateful for, because everything is part of the purpose, part of the great story. All right, so and that kind of brings me into what I wanted to talk about today. I think that what we'll talk about today, especially because it's Memorial Day, right? So it's a day where we are celebrating, not celebrating, but remembering, and those that are fighting and in conflict for us and representing us in various ways, or representing our government, however you want to look at it. When we find ourselves in conflict, I'm currently in a little bit of conflict with somebody who's close to me and that I love dearly and have no desire to be in conflict with, but I had a choice, and I think this is what happens with war as well. We have this choice. We can either speak our truths and stand up and say, no, that's actually not okay with me. I don't want to be treated that way, and I don't want to be talked to that way, and I don't want you ruling over my country in that way, and I don't want you taking my resources in that way, or whatever it may be, right? Like if we're talking on a global scale. You're welcome. You're welcome. So when we are in that state, there's this moment we have before we engage. Before we come into the engagement, where we have to make a decision. How valuable is it to us? Is it important enough to get into this engagement, right? Is it important? Is the subject of it important enough? Is there a reason for the conflict in the first place? And how do we handle that conflict with grace, with dignity, with allowance, with love, and with compassion? That is super hard. Because usually in a conflicted situation, our first goal is to prove ourselves right, to justify our feelings of aggression, or our feelings of being let down, or our feelings of righteousness and value. And that's what usually leads us into heated conflict, which will blow up in our faces. And so, how do we do that? And I'm curious, I'd love for you guys, while we're discussing this, to write up some of your strategies for conflict, and what is it that makes you feel invested enough to speak up and speak your truth, and what is it that blocks you from speaking your truth? Because what I have struggled with in most of my life is not speaking up and not speaking my truth. It's funny. In my family as a child, my mom used to call me the village news. My grandfather used to call me motor mouth. Everyone used to tease me about talking too much, about sharing too much information that I shouldn't be sharing. It was something I was heavily, heavily, heavily ridiculed for. And because I was so heavily ridiculed for it, it really shut me down for a long time. And I didn't speak. I didn't speak my truth. If people would ask me questions about their own lives, or science, or news, or politics, or whatever, if I was aware of it, I would talk about that stuff. But what was going on with me, I never really spoke about. And of course, one of the reasons that I was being so shut down was because I was being abused by all of my family members. My mother was pretty vacant. She just wasn't there. She didn't want to be bothered with the problems so that she wouldn't feel guilty when she went off to follow her dreams and pursue her own passions and creative projects. My stepfather was molesting me. My brother was pretty physically abusive and psychologically abusive. He was pretty scary to grow up with, actually. We have no relationship now as a result of that. My father was gone. He was just gone. So my grandparents, they were, pretty critical. My grandmother always was accusing me of not being feminine enough, not being loving enough, not being quiet enough. She just always had something that she couldn't stand about me, and my grandfather just straight out couldn't stand me. So it was just like everyone around me, all the people who are supposed to be this loving, supportive space for me, were actually a very scary, uncomfortable, mean place for me to exist within. And that's how I grew up. So, I grew up thinking I have to fight for my right to be anything, right? But I also was defeated at the same time. And that's a pretty hard place to be in. And I think that a lot of people can relate to that. We, especially when we come into this world with these gifts, I could see right through them and see what was going on with all of them. And until I learned how to control what I was saying about it, I was definitely more heavily ridiculed. The last thing an adult wanted was a little kid to come up and tell them what their true motivation was for their behavior or their actions. So it was a really challenging way to be raised. And I believe that many of us who are gifted in this way, gifted with sight, gifted with intuition, gifted with abilities and awareness and that sensitivity, go through those sorts of experiences because it teaches us control, discipline, restraint. And then we can come out of that space and we aren't just open streaming this information. We have an ability to be discerning about when we share it, how much of it we share. And that's a huge part of conflict. A huge part of it is knowing what is actually mine, what is actually theirs, and what is between us. So in the current conflict that I'm in, it's really a ridiculous one, I think. But I had to speak up because I was not appreciating the way I was being spoken to. I believe myself to be of pretty great value. I hold myself in high regard. I really love myself, and I know that when I speak up and I speak my truth, it's because it's necessary. It's something that needs to be said, and it's an opportunity for both people, myself and the other as well. And when I'm confused on it, I use my compass to try and decide. So the other person really did not want to be told this piece of information from me and responded in a escalating way. When you are speaking your truth, if somebody else responds by blowing it up, by blowing up what you've said out of proportion, by blowing up what you've done into something much bigger, if somebody is coming with all sorts of accusations, you're no longer in a healthy conflict, and it's not time to keep fighting. You've spoken your truth. It's time to back away. And that's the hardest thing, is to disengage. This isn't a retreat. This isn't a defeat. This is a backing away and creating space for that person to have their explosions. We don't have to stand in the middle of the nuclear testing site in order to understand how the bomb is blowing up, right? We can witness that from back far. And that's what's really important to remember when you're in a conflict or when you're in an engagement. It doesn't have to become an explosive environment. And if it does, you don't have to stay in it. You can step back, speak your truth, speak what you have to say, but then pull out, step back, and observe from afar. Allow them their space to have their reaction and their responses. And we tend to, in our culture, become extremely committed to that place of where we decide we're standing and what we're doing. I the funny thing is I actually witnessed a conflict just like this take place between two others that I love and respect and value greatly in my life. And I was watching them go through this conflict, and I was like, why are they making this a permanent decision? And one was making it a permanent decision of, I'm done. I'm never going to go back to that friendship. I'm all done. I will never work with that person again. And the other one is like, I don't understand why they won't come back into the relationship. I don't understand why they can't come back because it's just a petty conflict, but they also didn't take any accountability for their actions. And they were the ones that blew up. So oftentimes when somebody does blow up, the hardest thing for them to do is say, I'm sorry, I totally escalated that into an explosive environment. And I've had a lot of practice with this with my husband, a lot of practice with conflict with my husband over the 13 years that we've been married and the 15 years we've been together. And what I have found is that if your sense of self-worth is connected to being right, well, you're going to be screwed in this in that battlefield, because there's no such thing as right. There is no such thing as right. There's really actually no such thing as truth either. Truth is purely perspective based, and it's based on the perspective with which you hold your value, right? So if you're in a conflict with somebody and you're clinging to the truth of what you know, you have stopped listening. You're like a closed fist, and nothing can get inside of that fist. There's no space for anything, especially not the other person to come in. So as long as you're holding on to the truth of what you know, the truth of what you've seen in the conflict, there's no room. Then this is where you stay. You stay in a closed fist. And really the only thing you can do with a closed fist is hit things. Hit things with your truth. And that's a really hard thing to remember when you're wounded and when you're in the space of pain, of conflict, of struggle, of strife. You want to make it end. And we have this concept in our culture of that you can just break through it. Sometimes you've got to open up and let it come to you, right? So if you find yourselves in a conflict and that doesn't work, opening up, then the other person just keeps pummeling against you, they're not ready yet. So you got to pull back and give them lots of room to run around in their fisty circle so that they can come to a space where they're all done proving themselves right, and then you can re-engage. Now, sometimes that takes a few hours. Sometimes that takes a few days. Sometimes that takes a few months. But it doesn't have to be a permanent thing. And I think that's what a lot of us fear. We want to be, we want to know what's happening, what the final outcome is, what the truth of it is. And the reality is that we can't know that until the other person has stopped doing this. And once they stop doing that, then you can have a conversation and look, you can come together and find new truth and new space and new allowance. So that's what I have to say about that subject. Let's go ahead and work on that in meditation, because I know I could definitely use some support in this. And I have no idea what's going to come through in this meditation space, but I know it's going to be exactly what I need. So I wanted to support our work with a few different things. Let's see. First, I'm going to use some chalcedony. Chalcedony is a powerful stone, and not only does it help connect you, it is a crown kind of stone, but interestingly enough, goblets used to be lined with chalcedony if you were royalty, because they believed that chalcedony would neutralize poisons. And that was one of the ways the royals were most often killed, was through poisoning of their food. It was the easiest way to access them and not be caught, not be known who did the poisoning, right? Somebody else would usually get blamed, like the cook or the server. So this was something that helps release you from poisoning. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. Another piece that I'm going to use is this sap. It's cedar sap. Gosh, it's like glowing. Clearly wants to be used. This cedar sap is from my first Sweat Lodge experience, which was a really powerful, beautiful experience. It smells amazing. Oh God, it smells so good. And I use this a lot for clearing out the thoughts, clearing just like a sweep of fresh, clean breeze through the forest. That's what I use this for, is imagining it's doing that for your energy as well. So we're going to use these two pieces today during our meditation. And just allow yourself to tune into these and really focus in. This also is, because it's this golden yellow color, this helps us with our solar plex, where we get our sense of personal power, which is what's being threatened in a conflict. Our personal sense of power, our sense of righteousness, our sense of value and worth, right? And so it's usually our ego that's engaged in the conflict. So we're going to use these two to help support us in this work, okay? Go ahead, and we got 20 minutes. And that's a good long time for meditation work. So let's go ahead and make sure we're sitting comfortably. Whew, I got something in my way down here. I'm going to move it. Making a ruckus. The lid for the iPad case was all up in the way. All right. So go ahead and make sure you're sitting comfortably. I'm going to hold the cedar in my right hand, and the chalcedony in my left. Just imagine that you're holding these two in either palm, and the frequency of these two stone and sap are just coming through the body and supporting you as we breathe in. Coming into that present moment and breathe out. Breathing in this present moment, present awareness. And release. Breathe in. Really smelling the air, feeling the temperature. And exhale. Breathing in, feeling the air come into the vessel. And releasing. Feeling that breath growing longer and deeper with each one. Good. Breathing in, just start to take note of the thoughts that are pulling you, the ideas, maybe the people. We're just going to start unhooking as we come fully present into the here and the now. As you breathe in, take note of these lines pulling you out of yourself. And as you exhale, unhook and release. Breathe in, draw in those lines of connection. And as you exhale, release from more the people, the distractions, the ideas of what's undone, what happened yesterday, what will happen after we finish here or tomorrow. Just unhooking. Good. And bring your attention into the soles of your feet as you feel them growing and swelling. Feeling your roots already going down and spreading wider. Send those roots even wider and deeper. Breathing in, drawing that energy from the earth up through those roots, just like a tree draws the nutrients and fluids up from the earth, the water. We're going to draw that energy up as we breathe in. Excuse me. And as we release, we're going to just let it flow. All that's being cleansed and scrubbed out from our cells and from the space between, we're just going to let that wash down the root system back into the earth. The tree is always giving and receiving from the earth. So we're going to receive and give back. And what is debris to us, what feels like garbage or hardness or toxic, is actually nutrition for the earth. The earth uses that to build new molecules, new nutrients, new growth. There's always something in the earth that needs exactly what you have to give. So don't ever feel like you can't release something down into Gaia because you don't want to poison Gaia. Gaia is massive. She's got systems in place for all of it. So don't worry about what you're releasing into the earth. Don't hold it in your vessel. The tree has a constant circulatory flow. It doesn't really hold the energy that it brings in. It doesn't hold on to the energy that it's transmuting from the sunlight into the sugars. It uses them to grow and to flow back into the earth. And what's what we're going to be doing today while we do this work. Because there's a lot that we store in our body when we have conflict with somebody. So let's bring that up through the legs as we're continuing the breath. Breathing in and releasing. And remember, if you feel the urge to move your body, to adjust, to roll your shoulders, move your feet, do so. This is your body releasing even more. So breathing that energy up into the knees. As we come past the ankles with the energy, our ankles is where we receive pleasure. If you have problems in your ankles, then you have problems with receiving joy, love, pleasure, enjoyment, right? So really scrub and release those areas. Let that energy, just like water scrubbing, oscillate through the space of the ankles with extra intention and focus, because if we can't receive pleasure and joy, enjoyment, then what's the motivation? What's the point, right? We can't even receive it. So really scrub that area out. If you're one who has any ankle spraining problems, or broken ankles, anything like that, feet problems, these are all part of that. So breathing that up and through the calves and shins into the knee space. And our knees are where we cushion ourselves. How rigid are we in our belief systems? How rigidly do we hold on to something? If we've got knee problems or inflexibility in the knees, then you might be inflexible in your belief. I have a little bit of that going on in my left knee, which is my masculine side. So check and see which is your masculine and feminine side, if you've got it on one side or the other. So for me, my rigidity is in not expressing. I don't let myself express myself more forcefully as a more masculine trait. I tend to be in more fluid allowance, and I let other people behave however they need to, but I don't give myself permission to do the same, which is more in the feminine and less in the masculine energy. So they're imbalanced. If you have an imbalance like that, just allow yourself to become aware. Allow your body to communicate with you what it's been trying to compensate for. And just let the thoughts, the ideas, the flashes of people or situations that are stored in this space, just let them show themselves to you. It's not to fix them. It's not to change them. It's just to allow and let it show you what is going on there. So I need a lot of work in the knees. As you can see, I'm still there. Some of you have already moved well beyond it. That's beautiful. bringing that energy up through the thighs. Up into the hip space and our pelvic floor. Our hips are where we hold fear about moving forward, about what the next step is. Maybe if we tend to not want to take the next step, if we want to stay where we're at right now, we might have problems with hip pain or lower back, that pelvic floor, back part pain. This is very much held in these two spaces. Again, checking to see, is it your masculine or feminine side or both? Is it just a straight up fear of moving forward? Is it a fear of taking that next step and being assertive in that movement? Is it an allowance fear of what may come? Feminine energy, communal space. How do I move out of a community? Shifting. What? Just allow it to communicate with you and show you what it is. Bring it as my left knee starts to throb a little bit more. Interesting. It's interesting to know about. I'm going to also place my clearing energy, my ego clearing energy representation on my knee to support this clearing, because for me, I struggle with this. See how that shifted my light a bit? Good. So bringing that energy up through the abdomen. We're not going to go by chakras today. We're just going to come up through that abdomen space. Our abdomen is where we store our memory of pain, really. It's where we store our fear. It's where we store beliefs about ourselves as far as who we are and what somebody's done to us and our experiences. And it's all in this gut. That's the parasympathetic nervous system at play right there. This is where we store those things, the memories. Right, so just really allow this Gaia energy to cleanse through the whole intestinal space, through the bladder space. Bladder's where we store fear, process stress and anxiety, the hormones that our body uses to handle that. We also store cortisol in our stomachs. That's where we store that stress hormone. Just really flushing and releasing, giving our body permission to release what it's been holding on to as we observe and watch what comes to mind, what pops into our thoughts and our view as we do so. Bringing that energy up into the chest space, into the heart and lungs. Where our love comes from, where we connect with others. This is our connection with each other. Our feet connect us to Gaia, our crown to Source, our heart to each other. Really allow that clearing energy to come through that heart space as you clear and release all that you believe keeps you from being connected with others, from loving others, being loved by others, having others desire to connect with you. Bringing that up into the shoulders and down through the arms. This is our working space of connection to each other. Our hands are an extension, a minor chakra of our heart. That doesn't mean a less than, it just means they're the next conduit for that heart energy as it comes out through the body. So this is a way that we show our love, is with the way that we reach for each other and touch each other and connect with each other. So bringing that energy up through the shoulders, where we bear the responsibility we believe is ours to hold, where we hold our rigidity of beliefs, and often where we struggle to release the rigidity of a position that we're holding, as though if we let go, the whole world will come crashing down around us. And recognize that on those days where you have let yourself let go, nothing really crashed. There's all sorts of things to hold it up. See the support that's actually around you, the others that are supporting and holding, and just the nature of Earth itself supporting and holding. As you bring that energy up through the throat, where we share our truth from, through the mouth and head, that head space that we can get so caught up in. This doesn't store memories. This stores patterns. This stores thought processes and neuro pathway patterns. Just allow that to become cleansed as it shows you all the thought patterns and pathways that flow. Bringing it up into the crown. If you're like me, feeling a bit in the heart as we come up into the crown space, recognize there's some pieces there, just feeling a lack of the love in our connection with others. And so just recognize that, and I'm going to place my Chalcedony over the heart space, just supporting us from poisoning ourselves with our own beliefs about our worthiness of love, the access to love. Just really starting to release that as we poison ourselves with our thoughts and our feelings far more than others actually poison us. Breathing that energy up into the crown. There we go. Opening up the crown, feeling it open of its own, and sending that Gaia energy in ourselves up through our connection, just tracing ourselves up into our higher selves, up past our higher selves into our soul group where we are one, past that up into the infinite consciousness where we originally divided away from Source. And as we follow these lines back up, just take note, we are not dividing in anger. We divide in love, in allowance, and gratitude, in a quest to seek another perspective, to gain more awareness. We step back for a greater perspective, another view. Good. And let's feel that Source consciousness, that Source allness, oneness coming down through that connection as we come into alignment with our wholest of selves. Feel that energy coming back down through the crown, filling our head with this one love, allowance, joy, gratitude. Just feel those energies flowing in as Source shows us how grateful they are for us being here serving in this unique way, in our way. Feel that gratitude energy coming down through the throat. So grateful for our perspectives and views that we speak. Feel that energy coming down through the shoulders. Source doesn't actually feel a sense of responsibility. It's in a state of total allowance for the creation. It's observing the creation. So feel that difference of Source's energy in the shoulders. Feel that energy coming down through the arms and into the chest and heart. Allow Source's love for us and the creation to radiate out of the heart. Good. Feel that energy coming down through the abdomen and solar plex. Source has no need as identifying as one individuation. It recognizes that there are many, many individuations and that all are valuable and unique in their perspective. So grateful for the multiplicity. Feel that energy coming down through the abdomen, through the space where we create from, our womb space, our passion place, our creation. And just feel that gratitude slipping down, filling that space, down through the pelvic floor and the hips. As Source recognizes change is inevitable, and we always are in constant motion, constant flux, constant shifting, constant change. Feel that energy flowing down through the thighs, into the knees, down into the calves and shins, all the way down into the ankles. And flow that source energy down the feet and into the Gaia, into the earth, as you serve as a conduit between source and earth, a planetary consciousness also here, growing and learning, embodying the creation from her greater perspective, from her global perspective. Now in this state of grounded and connectedness, excuse me, I want you to feel that heart line coming out, radiating out from you, and imagine someone that you're in conflict with, somebody that you are in a fight with, in a disagreement with, somebody that you feel separate from, distanced from, and that you'd really wish that you could actually find a way to not feel that distance, to feel like you could come back in togetherness, to oneness again. Just envision them in front of you. Imagine them standing there in front of you or sitting. Oh, as my back pops. And our desire is always to first give, so let's allow receiving in this moment. Let's release our need to give first, and let's allow ourselves to receive. And I want you to allow yourself to see them sharing their perspective with you, and really try to receive it. Replay everything that they've spoken of, everything that they've shared, everything that they've been angry about or hurt about. Just allow them to share that with you in this connected space, in this space of allowance for one another. And see if you can't find your way to see from their view. Just try to see from their perspective. It's really hard. I'm struggling with it myself. As you can see, I'm having a hard time even getting the words out. So let's just give it a moment and allow yourselves to replay their expressions in just this time and space as they share with you how they view you have been, how they view your role, your part in this conflict. Just allow yourself to receive it. And as they're sharing with you, notice how you're already starting to get messages about where they're at in their experience. For me, the person was telling me that my energy's been off and I've been distant or unavailable. I was less available. I was more distant. I was seeing that I had taken too much responsibility for them and their problems, and I was trying to fix everything for them, and I had to step back. So of course they were feeling the lack of my support. It was lacking. And it was necessary for both, because by doing so, by giving too much support, I was robbing that person of understanding their own strength, being able to try and fail and fall and stand on their own. I was teaching them they needed me in order to do so. And that's not true. I had to make the shift. And that's uncomfortable for anyone. Allow yourself to receive this awareness as you continue to replay all of their complaints about you. Just continue replaying and letting them tell you their truth of their experience, not trying to determine if it's right or if it's wrong, but assuming it's right, assuming it's correct in this moment, in this space, so that you can have a greater understanding of yourself, your motivation, and your actions. That's all. Just allowing. For me, in my conflict, the person believed that I was being too controlling and not allowing them to have the power of this creation that we were making. And at the same time that I was unavailable and too distant. That sounds like an internal struggle of wanting to be able to do it on their own and not feeling like they could do it on their own and seeking an external source to blame for that. I can relate to that. I've done that myself. And I was trying to help, and I was trying to drive it and move it, and it wasn't mine. I didn't actually want to be doing it. So I was feeling resentful about that. And they were probably picking up on that resentment. And they probably were feeling resentment, not wanting to have me in control, not wanting to need me to control, yet not feeling able and capable on their own. Just continue in this way until there's really nothing left in the conflict to be run over, to be looked at, to be played out. This is how we can take a different perspective and approach to these conflicts with one another. Continue to do so until all you have is understanding, awareness, and gratitude for the expression. Because I see that it wasn't easy for me to speak my truth, and it wasn't easy for them to receive it. So I'm grateful for the space to be able to play it out. Go ahead and continue on this until you feel done. And when you do feel like you're done, just continue flowing that source and Gaia energy up from the roots, down through the crown, through the whole vessel, and out the heart to the other person, shining gratitude, love and allowance and acceptance for where they're at and where you're at. Try this in your next conflict and see if this doesn't work to change the way you do war. I love you guys. Have a happy Memorial Day. I hope you get outside and enjoy this beautiful weather we're having.